I have a strong opinion about that. At many conferences, including this one, there's a mixture between serious scientists who are trying their best to think critically and develop data sets and evaluate the data sets, and a mixture of people who are trying to sell stuff. And the people who are trying to sell stuff, even though the material they're trying to sell may or may not work, they don't care. They just want to sell it. So I think the public justifiably becomes cynical and soured on anti-aging research in general. I have colleagues who tell me I should never say I do anti-aging research, because people who do anti-aging research are frauds and charlatans and just trying to make money. I tell them, no, I'm doing real anti-aging research. But the public will need to be convinced that there are serious scientists and not confused by people who are trying to confuse them in order to make a quick buck.
I think that's extremely important. If I take the example of the country Singapore, where I live in, the birth rate is now very low, the population is aging rapidly, and it's a small country, so you see the effects that have been seen in Japan and are being seen in China are seen much more quickly in Singapore because the population is smaller. So it's really important to educate people that things they can do in early life and midlife can have a big effect, not so much on lifespan, but on health span. So the idea is your age is one thing, but healthy aging is very important.
I think it's critical that we get the public to understand that they can do something about aging, and if they do it, they'll be healthy and happy much later in life. Evidence is clear that this is possible, whether it's lifestyle interventions or supplements or drugs or other interventions. MedTech, for instance, all of these things show promise. But right now, much of the public still doesn't understand that they can modify their aging process. Getting that word out is so important.
I think it's really important. I think people need to understand that biological age is something that you can measure, and that age is something that you can reverse. And once people understand that, a bit like if you're too fat and you can get thinner, it's the same process with your age. And I think that's very important. People will understand that, and then people will make that part of their health regime, which I think is going to be very important going forward.
So I think, as most people, I think most scientists would think that that's quite important. I think it's very important because we want the public to fund the work, because we believe it's going to be to their benefit. But I think it's also very important so that people's attitudes to aging and aging research change. Now, how to do it, I guess we have to engage the public, but I think we also have to produce things that they will use. So I think once we start getting interesting things out to the public, I think they'll start responding better as well.
非常重要。其实让我们这个大众要了解或者说咨询，其实我们要抗衰老最重要的或最根本的，要我们明确就是有个更好的认知，因为我们知道人类的寿命可以如果说没有其他的原因的话，可以活到120岁。但是我们为什么没有活到120岁？就是因为我们有很多的危险因素，使这些让我们这个活不到120岁。所以说，从这个那个观众就是大众的这个层面来讲，就是我们要知道哪些危险因素让我们不能活到120岁。如果说我们能够把这些因素给它这个消除或者减少的话，我们就可能会活到接近120岁，甚至120岁。那这些危险因素是什么呢？第一个就是我们要好的这个是健康的生活习惯，比如说吸烟喝酒这个饮食里面的高盐饮食都会让我们发生癌症，发生这个三高。那这些因素都可以让我们这个寿命缩短比如说这个血脂这些没控制好的话，可以发生这个心梗血压没控制好的话会脑卒中这样的话我们就可能活不到现在的所谓的70、80岁可能50、60岁、40、50岁都可能这个过早的这个趋势了。如果说我们能够把这些因素给去掉，那我们就可能就 活到这个80、90、100甚至120。所以说我最重要的是就是说，这些因素啊是让我们缩短寿命的这个关键的问题所在。所以说从人类的角度讲，我们首先要更好的生活习惯，然后及时的预防性的干预，这样的话不至于这些慢性疾病产生，然后夺走我们的这个生命那如果说有所谓的抗衰老药物的话，也是在这些控制的基础上，控制好的三高防慢病这些很好的基础上，才可能有效。否则的话，一个心梗一个脑卒中就可能让我们去世，再好的药物都不能挽救我们的生命。
Yeah, I think it's all about education. That's why it's great what you're doing here with the TimePi forum, that you educate the people, that you bring the topic to the broader masses, and I think that's still the foundation of everything. So having more exchanges and knowledge exchange about the topic, I think that's the most important for the moment.
Aging is not a disease, even though a lot of people, scientists and biohackers in the field like to say aging is a disease. It is not. Aging is a risk factor for multiple diseases, but we can approve drugs for risk of disease. It's called preventative medicine. And so the way that these drugs are going to reach the masses are to start by treating acute, real diseases today, diseases like obesity, vulnerability to diseases like COVID or flu, but then they will go from being treatments to being preventatives. They'll get first approved, I call it the stepping stone indications. They'll first be approved as a treatment, and then they will be secondarily approved as a prevention. This is how almost all preventative medicines come to market.
其实就是让大家维护自己的健康嘛，尽量延缓衰老。因为现在的这种时代发展的很快嘛，大家都很卷。那卷的话呢，其中一个体现就是大家都不睡觉，都拼命的在那儿干活，是吧？干活是对的，但是睡觉还是需要的。其实你如果把这个觉睡好了，很多健康的问题就解决了，衰老的问题也就相应的解决了。
I really think that is very important to transmit all the knowledge about healthy aging to the public in general. We should use the social networks as much as we can, and events like TimePi, a longevity forum, is amazing one to share all this knowledge. It's very important, first of all, to define and to transmit to people, to public in general, the basics of anti-aging. For that, we really don't need very complex things. There are some stuff that is very simple, very basic, and that is scientifically proven that works, like physical exercise. So physical exercise, a good diet, avoiding sugar, avoiding dairy, avoiding red meat, having a purpose in life, being social, the interactions with others are very, very important. Being in a couple, when you live in a couple, it seems like you live longer. So there are so many approaches that we really need to transmit to the public, that after this kind of things, then we need to go to the next step. That is to educate the population in first do this basic stuff. Is mandatory, will be mandatory to do this basic stuff if you want to have a good health span. And then you can also add some extra things to improve your health span, like taking supplementation. A good supplement will be very important for longevity and healthy aging, and to do some specific treatments to try to find the best version of ourselves.
Well, I mean, certainly me as an academic, what we try to do, especially in Singapore with the Center for Healthy Longevity, is the outreach activities. So from our side as scientists, we try to create a lot of public events where that are open to the public. So we do webinars where we explain about our research, but also in the context of the general biology of aging, how clinical translation works. events like this, like the TimePi Longevity Forum, which are open not just to, let's say, professional scientists, but also companies and people that are interested in general in the longevity space, are very important. Other activities can be done more top-down from the governments, of course, and then that would be key, right? I mean, so in Singapore, again, where I work, it's a small country, it's well managed in terms of bringing awareness in the population. So the government is really promoting with apps, with the media, with using also us scientists to interact with the public in order to explain a lot more about aging in a more approachable manner.
我觉得这个意义还是非常大的。就看刚才我们的数据来看，就是21年的时候，咱们老年的人群达到18%几。其实我们有越来越多的群体可能进入到一个会非常关注衰老的这样的一个年龄段。那么我觉得现在公众对于各类的这个认知都在增加。那对于衰老的话呢，这也是摆在了就是大家各自面前想要了解的一个板块。所以谁能够走出来，帮助公众更多的了解这个衰老的原理，更多的帮助他们科普，我觉得这是一个非常有意义的事情。像我觉得今天这个活动，我觉得也是有这个感触啊。所以我是非常认同咱们时光派做的这个事情啊，值得去帮助公众去科普。
我觉得一个方面呢是，因为衰老其实它是一个非常复杂的过程嘛，对吧？它是由这个个人生活习惯，还有一些环境的因素，还有一些基因的因素等等多重原因所驱动的。那我们更广大的这个所有的受众、消费者或者是老百姓，更深入的了解衰老的机制之后，可能可以很好的帮我们实现健康的主动应对，对吧？或者叫衰老的主动应对，因为其实这个是需要一个非常综合的一个系统性的解决方案，我们才可以不断的延长我们的健康的寿命，也可以从整体上提升这个社会的幸福感和这个比如说一些公共服务的这种压力。
我觉得这个意义非常重大。首先，衰老本身是关系到我们每一个个体，说每一个人，大家都希望对自己的健康非常有关心，对不对？然后衰老的话，同时这个随着大家生活水平的不断提高嘛，可以说是所有人的一个追求。所以对于一个科普本身，我觉得从一个公众民众来说，首先是了解到这个领域的前沿在什么地方，这个是很关键的。另外一个的话，其实衰老也是非常个性化的一个东西，因为比如说不同的年龄、不同的这个性别、不同的这个遗传背景，都可能会影响到一个衰老的一个干预的手段的一个变化。所以我觉得对于衰老的科普，一方面是对于自身的一个了解，另一方面也是对科研前沿的了解，这个非常重要。
People don't think much about aging, not because they're stupid, and not because they are like blindsided or something, but because evolutionary, over millions of years, we were accustomed to think about what is happening this week, this evening, but not in 20 years. So it's counterintuitive and it's counter-evolutionary for people to think about very long-term distances. So the only thing to popularize anti-aging practices and habits is to make them more simple to implement in your life. So that right now the barrier is quite high. Maybe you need to take a lot of supplements. Maybe you need to read a lot of science, a lot of articles. Maybe you need to do a lot of exercises, and all that needs to be done at once, like in parallel. That's why people are holding back, and that's why they are not engaged into anti-aging really. And so what we build is we build a way for people to easily interface with anti-aging through our application, for example. But that's can be applied to every business in anti-aging. Every business in anti-aging and longevity industry should work to make their products easier to accept, easier to understand for people.
So this is actually what I'm good at. I have a pretty big following online, and I've treated some of the biggest celebrities in the world. And the key is you have to make longevity and you have to make aging interesting to the average person. So I think you have to treat the celebrities first. So I've treated many A-list celebrities like Chris Hemsworth, Zac Efron. I have pictures on Instagram so you can see them. But the point is, when you treat the famous people first, then the regular people get curious. Then they're like, oh, what are all the celebrities doing? How do they keep their skin young? How do they keep their body young? So then they get curious and then they start wanting to do it. So I think that's how you get widespread adoption.
In all honesty, the way you bring it to the public is through access. And so right now, when you say anti-aging or regenerative medicine, normally that accompanies a high price tag. So the only way to make these therapies more accessible is to proliferate them, find ways for lower cost acquisition, and get more people interested. Don't just bring it to the elite people, but find a way to make it applicable for every man, woman, and child. Make it applicable to every person in every lifestyle scenario. The more people that have access, it lowers the cost down, and then it's not just a fringe benefit for the rich and wealthy, but it's actually something that's obtainable for regular, everyday people.
I think to begin with, we need to get them interested. And to get them interested, they have to see something simple. They have to see examples of people who look younger, even though you can look younger on the outside and actually be a disaster on the inside. But I think that's what the people want to begin with. And then they'll see that, wow, this could actually make me look and maybe also feel younger. Then we can start to explain in simple terms what the science is, and then for the people who have the tolerance for the complicated scientific details, we can then get into the details. But I think people like simple visual examples. Like you see someone who just looks weak and old, and they try a treatment, and then they look strong and young. And then that will get them interested, and then we can explain the science behind it. And everything else, I mean, the advantages of having these people who have gained 70, 80, 90 years of wisdom, but who are unable to convey that wisdom because they're too old and frail, suddenly they're youthful enough to be able to convey this wisdom. There's an advantage to having elderly people be strong and youthful for a society as a whole.
I think what will have to happen to bring anti-aging technology to the public is people making real significant demonstrations of success. I think it's like any new technology, when it's a lot of promise, it's difficult to believe. And especially with anti-aging, because there are a lot of people who are not that believable. So I think some people actually making it to 120, 130, 140 years old, I think would make a big difference in public acceptance.
任何只要你涉及到把衰老作为一个干预手段，或者是你提到干预衰老，那包括衰老本身的这种定义哈，现在有很多人说衰老到底是不是一种疾病哈，大家也都在有争议。那如果你提到干预衰老，那你自然而然你要告诉他你如何干预才是科学的，是吧？那么这里面实际上不同的这个就是各种层级的这种学术报告是很多的，对吧？但如何把这个学术报告用这个科学的语言，甚至科普的语言，分享给这个社会的这个普罗大众哈，我们觉得这个还是就是科学工作者应该更多关注的地方哈。那毕竟得用一些比较简单的语言，能够让大家知道，就说哪种干预方式是科学的，什么样的是伪科学的，去伪存真嘛，这个一定是一个必须要走的这样的一个过程。所以我觉得有效的把这些研究进展能够尤其像我们说的各种生物的标志物啊，对吧？衰老的干预的靶点，能够真正意义上的转化成这种科普的语言宣传给大家，这应该是一个必须的过程。